Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for the 23rd of November 2015. Only a week left in the Atlantic hurricane season. Nothing happened in the Atlantic Ocean to speak of, and so I thought I would show you what is going on. A couple of interesting things, and then we get ready to prepare for the off-season edition of this outlook where we look at the larger puzzle pieces that may affect next year's hurricane season, and then look for large disruptive, even small disruptive winter storms and nor'easters in the lower 48. So we always have something to talk about, even in the off season, which is just a little over a week away from happening. Today, though, check it out, the El Nino in the Pacific peaking hopefully by now. Sea surface temperatures averaging well above normal here in the equatorial Pacific, and the record area of warmth here in what we call the Nino 3.4 region. It's just a sub-region of the larger area of warm water in the Pacific has reached 3.1 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, which is a record, quite a bit above where it was even in 1997. And a lot has been made about this, and a lot will continue to be made about this, and rightfully so, because, I mean, this is like a huge heating element that has been turned on in the globe, on our planet. And it's in the ocean, so it's going to affect a lot of sensible weather around the globe, including warmer temperatures overall, more moisture added to the atmosphere, a lot more energy, and probably a lot of things that we just haven't figured out yet, how to connect those dots back to this incredible warmth along the equatorial Pacific that we call the El Nino. Now notice here in the Gulf of Mexico, sea surface temperatures above average, as they are in the northwest Atlantic, and even the tropical Atlantic for the most part running right where it should be, or just slightly warmer than average. And looking ahead at some of the climate models, it appears that this region will stay warm and maybe even warm up as this area begins to cool dramatically into 2016. We'll talk about that more in December. One of the big drivers of how the El Nino Southern Oscillation works, and that's sort of the larger term for it, it's called the El Nino Southern Oscillation, because it comes and goes, it oscillates from La Nina to neutral to El Nino and back again over the course of several years. It's just a very large, like I said, sort of a thermal regulator and enhancer sometimes for planet Earth. Well, the Southern Oscillation Index, which is the pressure pattern down in the deep tropics for the simplest way to explain it, typically when it's very negative, like you've seen here the last several months, August, September, and October, well below zero, strongly negative numbers, gives you that very strong El Nino. But look at what's happening now. The daily contributor, each day this is measured, the difference between the surface pressure between Tahiti and Darwin, and then computation is made and you get a standard deviation from normal, and so you can have positive and negative and even neutral, of course. Well, look what's going on here. We have a positive 11, almost 12, and that has been positive for the last several days, a couple weeks actually, so that the running 30-day average here is now only minus 5.83. We can just round it up and call it minus 6. Well, look at how much above the long-term 30-day average was, say, from October. We're talking about a 15 to 16 point climb, and that's really, really impressive how fast the Southern Oscillation Index has turned around. And what that means, more than likely, is that we will begin to see this slowly start to fade and then rapidly drop off once we get into 2016. And I'll show you next week when we close out the hurricane season sort of a few things to look for next year. Have a couple of graphics to wait until then, sort of like a cliffhanger, and I'll show you those next week as to why it looks like we will be going into the potential for a very busy Atlantic hurricane season in 2016. As of now, this is where things stand. This is a really nice chart from Dr. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University's Tropical Cyclone Seasonal Forecast Program. We've had 11 named storms, probably won't have any more. And that's about 94% of what we should have. And most of the other numbers are well above at least the halfway point, except for the hurricane days, which is slightly below half of where we usually are by this time of year. And what does that mean? That's the number of days where we have a hurricane on the map. And this year we had about 11 and a half days where there were hurricanes out there. We had 2 major hurricanes, and that's about 74% of normal. So all in all, we had not a really lackluster hurricane season compared to what a lot of people were thinking for this year. And I'll go over that in more detail again next Monday. But this is the way things look now. Our accumulated cyclone energy index number, 62.1, which is considerably below the 1981 to 2010 average or mean, and that was about 60% of where we should be. But even this number here is quite a bit higher than 35 and 40, which is the last 2 numbers that Colorado State was predicting in their tropical cyclone program. They were thinking 35 to 40, somewhere in there for an ACE number, and you can basically blame Joaquin there for ruining that because it brought in quite a few ACE points to the score. I'll talk about this more again next week. So what's going on in the Atlantic? Nothing at all. In fact, the Eastern Pacific is where everything is happening pretty much all season long, and that hasn't broken precedence. As we end the month of November, we have a new tropical depression, number 22E, and that E, of course, stands for Eastern Pacific, and it's forecast. In fact, they haven't updated their map. That's kind of funny. It is forecast to become a hurricane and then curve up towards, yes, you guessed it, Mexico again. I can show you that better here on the track map from the NCAR site. This is the different model suite output, and majority of the models indicating this comes inland somewhere in Mexico, maybe near the Baja, hopefully south and east of there, and hopefully it'll be substantially weaker than what I'm going to show you it could be. Now, you might be wondering, where is this in relation to where Patricia made landfall, and that was down here. And I don't know if you pronounce the J or not on the state here, the state of Jalisco. Maybe you don't, so maybe it's Jalisco. But anyway, Patricia made landfall down here to the west of Manzanillo, and so this would be far, far away from where Patricia had its impact. As small an area as it was, you still don't want anything coming anywhere near there. So you folks along the southern Baja and into mainland Mexico up here, be watching this as this comes and turns the corner. This time of year, these upper level troughs coming in will erode that ridge of high pressure, and these systems are going to easily turn. Hopefully this will be the last one, and especially since some of the intensity models bringing it up into Cat 2, Cat 3 territory, and then right near landfall it drops off substantially. Probably would have a lot of shear coming in over the top of it, drier air being injected into that center of circulation, and sea surface temperatures are coming down in that region. I mean, after all, it's approaching the end of November, and typically the Pacific hurricane season, the East Pacific hurricane season, doesn't really go this far with tropical cyclones out there. This is kind of an anomaly that we are seeing. So just wanted to make sure you were aware of that if you're along the southern Baja, Cabo San Lucas area, and then in mainland Mexico from there. Keep an eye on it. I'll be talking about it on the blog on hurricanetrack.com throughout this week. A lot of people traveling. Hey, you might be going to Cabo for Thanksgiving. Who knows? We want to make sure you're aware of what's happening out there. All right, well, that's it for me for today and for the week on video discussions anyway. I'll keep the blog updated on hurricanetrack.com, and then next Monday I'll have a little bit longer look at the hurricane season that we had, some early thoughts about what to look for next year. I wouldn't even say it's a forecast. That is definitely above my pay grade, but some things to look for, clues to keep an eye on and see how things might pan out as we begin to anticipate what might happen next year. Have a great rest of your week ahead. Travel safe if you're doing so. At least the weather should cooperate for most of the lower 48 and beyond. And I'll talk to you next week.